She woke up in the morning next to a stranger, wearing nothing but a wedding ring on her finger. A great passionate and heartwarming love story. Hi, my very powerful, loyal, and best family in the world. How are you? May God bless you, protect you, and fill your hearts with love and joy. Today, I want to lift up a vertical, beautiful prayer for my precious family. Heavenly Father, bless my beautiful family. Fill their hearts with love, their homes with peace, and their lives with joy. Protect them, guide them, and remind them they are never alone. In your mighty name I pray. Amen. But today, my beautiful family, my heart is breaking. I have always given you my heart through my stories. I have written with love, passion, and the deepest emotions, even when I was unwell, even when life was difficult, because this family means everything to me. But now, I feel like you are not listening to me. I built this channel for love, for connection, for togetherness, but I see it slipping away. I am asking you, I am begging you, please like every video, comment and share. But many of my family members are silent. YouTube is pushing us down, reducing our reach by 80%. Many of my loyal family members have stopped coming. Have they forgotten that they were ever part of this family? I have tears in my eyes as I write this. Writing is not easy. It takes my soul, my heart, my strength. I am unwell, yet I am still here, pouring my love into every word, every story. James is presenting the story, but my soul is still here, fighting for this family. My beautiful family, I need you now more than ever. If things continue like this, I don't know how much longer I can keep going. This may be the last time you hear from me. Please, if you are truly my family, show it. Engage. Be present. Make our family strong again. I love you all with my whole heart. Let's not let this family fall apart. God bless you, my beautiful family. I am waiting for you.
Chapter 1. The Oak Tree Promise. The oak tree stood majestically at the edge of Willow Creek Park, its broad branches creating a perfect canopy of shade against the summer sun. It was the largest tree in the entire town, with roots that local legend claimed reached all the way to the center of the earth. For most residents, it was simply a landmark, a meeting place, a gentle giant that had witnessed generations come and go. But for 8-year-old William Banks and Billy Kalisha, it was their kingdom. "Race you to the tree," Billy called out, her copper-colored pigtails bouncing as she sprinted across the freshly cut grass, the scent of summer thick in the air. William followed, his sneakers pounding against the earth, knowing he wouldn't catch her. Billy was the fastest runner in their third-grade class, faster than even Tommy Wilson, who boasted about his speed every day at recess. William didn't mind losing to her, though. He never minded losing to Billy. "You're too slow," she teased when he finally reached the tree, his chest heaving. She was barely winded, her freckled face glowing with triumph. "You need to practice more." "Not everyone can be as fast as you," William replied, dropping his backpack and flopping down on the grass. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and he pushed it away with a swipe of his hand. Billy sat beside him, crossing her legs and smoothing her yellow sundress over her knees. "That's because not everyone eats their vegetables like I do," she said matter-of-factly. "My mom says vegetables make you strong." William rolled his eyes. "My dad says the same thing, but I still don't like broccoli." They settled into a comfortable silence, the kind only possible between best friends who knew each other's thoughts without speaking them. Above them, the oak leaves rustled in the gentle breeze, casting dancing shadows across their faces. "I got in trouble again today," William finally said, picking at the grass. "Mrs. Peterson got mad because I couldn't read the passage out loud." Billy looked at him, her green eyes softening. Unlike most of their classmates, she never laughed when William struggled with reading. "The words get all jumbled up again." He nodded, embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "They move around on the page. Dad says I'm not trying hard enough, but I am." "I know you are," Billy said, reaching into her backpack. She pulled out a small notebook with a blue cover. "That's why I made this for you." William took the notebook, opening it carefully. Inside, Billy had written out their reading assignments in big, clear letters with small drawings beside difficult words. Next to mountain, she'd drawn a simple peak. Beside ocean, a series of waves. "The pictures help you remember what the words mean," she explained, "and I used your favorite color pen." William stared at the notebook, a lump forming in his throat. No one had ever understood his struggles the way Billy did. No one had ever tried to help without making him feel stupid. "Thank you," he whispered, afraid that if he spoke any louder, his voice might break. Billy nudged his shoulder with hers. "That's what best friends are for, silly." The afternoon stretched before them, golden and unhurried. They did their homework together, Billy helping William with reading, William helping Billy with math. They shared the peanut butter cookies Billy's mother had packed for her and the orange juice box from William's lunch. When homework was finished, they climbed the oak's lower branches, careful not to go higher than they'd promised their parents. From their perch, they could see most of the town, the row of shops along Main Street, the church steeple rising above the buildings, the blue ribbon of the creek that gave their town its name. "Do you think we'll be friends forever?" Billy asked suddenly, swinging her legs from the branch. William didn't hesitate. "Of course we will." "But how can you be sure? Jenny and Lisa said they'd be friends forever, but now they don't even talk to each other." William considered this. At 8 years old, forever seemed both impossibly distant and entirely within reach. "We're different," he said firmly. "We're not like Jenny and Lisa." "Promise?" Billy held out her pinky finger, her expression solemn. William linked his pinky with hers. "I promise." But Billy wasn't satisfied. She jumped down from the branch, landing with practiced ease. "We need to make it official," she declared. From her backpack, she produced a sheet of paper and a box of colored pencils. Sitting cross-legged beneath the tree, she began to draw. William watched as 2 stick figures emerged on the page, one with spiky dark hair, one with orange pigtails. Between them, she drew their hands linked together. "This is us," she said, handing William a pencil. "Now we both have to write it." In careful letters, they took turns writing beneath the drawing. "No matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other." "Now we sign it," Billy instructed, printing her name in purple. William added his in blue, his letters slightly crooked but legible. "There," Billy said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Now it's a real promise." William took the paper, folding it carefully. From his pocket he produced a small tin box, once filled with mints, now housing his collection of treasures. A blue jay feather, a smooth river stone, a penny pressed flat on the railroad tracks. "We can keep it in here," he said, placing their promise among his most valued possessions. "For safekeeping." Billy nodded approvingly. "And we should do one more thing." She pulled out her Swiss Army knife, a gift from her father before he passed away, which she wasn't supposed to carry but always did. "We're not allowed to use that," William protested weakly, though curiosity overcame his caution. "It's just this once," Billy assured him, approaching the oak tree. With the tip of the small blade, she carefully carved a small heart into the bark. Inside, she etched their initials, BK plus WB. "There," she said, stepping back to admire her work. "Now even the tree knows our promise." William touched the carving gently, feeling the roughness of the bark beneath his fingertips. Something about seeing their initials together, preserved in the living wood of the ancient oak, made their promise feel even more significant. "I'll never break our promise," he said quietly, "no matter what." Billy slipped her hand into his, her small fingers warm against his palm. "Me neither. We'll always find each other." Above them, the oak's leaves whispered secrets to the wind, bearing witness to the solemn vow of 2 children who believed in forever with all the certainty their young hearts could hold. Neither could have known then how their promise would be tested, how many years would pass before they stood beneath these branches again. But the promise was made, preserved in a drawing locked within a tin box, etched into bark that would continue to grow around their initials, keeping their bond safe until they returned to claim it. As the afternoon light turned golden, they gathered their belongings and headed home, unaware that their paths would soon diverge, or that the promise made in childhood innocence would one day be their way back to each other. Chapter 2. The Flood That Changed Everything. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. What began as a gentle spring shower had transformed into a relentless downpour that battered the small town of Willow Creek with frightening intensity. The creek that gave the town its name, usually a gentle, meandering stream, had swollen into a raging torrent that threatened the low-lying areas where families like the Banks lived. William pressed his face against his bedroom window, watching water accumulate in their yard. School had been cancelled, and he hadn't seen Billy since Tuesday. He missed her. They'd spoken briefly on the phone yesterday, planning to meet at the oak tree once the rain stopped. But now the streets between their homes were impassable. "William, come help with these sandbags." His father's voice carried up the stairs, urgent and strained. Reluctantly, William tore himself away from the window. Downstairs, chaos reigned. His father, soaked to the skin, was stacking sandbags against the front door, while his mother frantically moved photo albums and important documents to higher shelves. The radio crackled with emergency broadcasts, the announcer's voice unnervingly calm as she described evacuation routes. "The water's rising faster than they predicted," his father said, not meeting William's eyes. "We need to get these last bags in place, then move everything valuable upstairs." William nodded, trying to be brave as he helped his father with the heavy sandbags. His small arms ached with the effort, but he didn't complain. He'd never seen his father look so worried. The sky darkened prematurely as evening approached, the rain showing no signs of stopping. Their electricity flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the house into shadows broken only by the beam of his father's flashlight and the candles his mother hastily lit. "Robert." His mother's voice was tight with fear. "The water's coming in through the basement." William watched his father's shoulders slump momentarily before he straightened, his jaw set in determination. "We need to leave. Now, pack only what you can carry." "Leave?" William's voice came out small and frightened. "But what about our house? What about—" "There's no time, William," his father cut in. "The evacuation order just came through on the radio. The dam upstream is at risk of failure." William's world narrowed to a pinpoint of panic. Upstairs, he frantically stuffed clothes into his school backpack, his mind racing. What about their promise? What about Billy? He couldn't leave without saying goodbye. "Can I call Billy?" he pleaded as his parents rushed around gathering essentials. "I need to tell her. The phones are down, son," his father said, more gently now. "And the Kalishas live on higher ground. They'll be safe." William's fingers closed around the small tin box on his dresser. Inside was their promise, the drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands. He couldn't leave it behind. Tucking it securely into his pocket, he followed his parents downstairs. Outside, the rain was a solid wall of water. Their old station wagon sat in the driveway, already packed with what few valuables they could salvage. William climbed into the back seat, his clothes instantly soaked despite the brief journey from house to car. "What about Rusty?" he asked suddenly, remembering their elderly neighbor who lived alone. "The rescue teams are checking on everyone who hasn't evacuated," his mother assured him, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the dashboard. "We need to focus on getting ourselves to safety now." The car's headlights cut weak paths through the downpour as his father navigated the flooded streets. Water lapped at the tires, sometimes reaching halfway up the doors. William pressed his face against the window again, trying to glimpse Billy's neighborhood as they passed, but everything was obscured by rain and darkness. "Dad, please," William begged. "Can't we just drive by Billy's house? I need to say goodbye." His father's eyes met his in the rearview mirror, filled with a sadness William couldn't fully comprehend. "We can't, William. The roads to their neighborhood are completely flooded. We have to take the evacuation route out of town. But our promise—" "I'm sorry, son." His father's voice broke. "Sometimes promises have to wait." Tears mixed with raindrops on William's face as they drove away from everything he'd ever known. The town blurred behind them, swallowed by the storm. He clutched the tin box in his pocket, holding onto it as if it were a lifeline. "Where are we going?" he finally asked, once they'd reached higher ground and the immediate danger of flooding had passed. "To Uncle Pete's in New York," his mother answered, reaching back to squeeze his knee reassuringly. "Just until we can come back and rebuild." "How long will that be?" His parents exchanged a look that William would remember for years to come, a look that contained volumes of adult worry and uncertainty that his 8-year-old mind couldn't fully grasp. "We don't know yet," his father admitted, "but we'll come back as soon as we can." William nodded, trying to be strong, even as his heart broke at the thought of leaving Billy behind. "I'll write to her every day," he promised himself. "And as soon as we come back, I'll meet her at our tree." Miles away, Billy Kalisha slept soundly in her bed on the town's highest hill, unaware that her best friend was disappearing into the rainy night. She dreamed of sunny days by the oak tree, of races across the park, of helping William with his reading. In her dream, they were carving their initials deeper into the bark, making sure they would last forever. When she woke the next morning, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight streamed through her window, deceptively cheerful after days of gloom. She bounded downstairs, eager to call William and see if they could meet at their tree. "Mom, can I call William now?" she asked, finding her mother in the kitchen. Charlotte Kalisha turned from the stove, her expression carefully composed. "Not yet, sweetheart. The phones are still down from the storm." "Then can we drive over? I want to make sure he's okay." Her mother's hesitation was brief but noticeable. "The roads are still flooded in that part of town. We'll check on the Banks family later, once things clear up." Satisfied with this answer, Billy ate her breakfast and spent the morning helping her mother clean up storm debris from their yard. It wasn't until late afternoon, when she overheard her mother on the newly restored phone line, that she realized something was wrong. The entire street. Evacuated? Her mother's voice drifted from the living room. "Did anyone hear where the Banks family went?" Billy's heart began to race. She crept closer to the doorway, straining to hear more. "I see. No, I haven't told Billy yet. She'll be devastated. Those two were inseparable." Were. The past tense hit Billy like a physical blow. She burst into the room, startling her mother. "What happened to William?" she demanded, her voice rising with panic. "Where is he?" Charlotte quickly ended her call, kneeling to meet her daughter's frightened gaze. "Billy, honey, the flooding was very bad in William's neighborhood. His family had to evacuate with many others. But they're coming back, right? Once the water goes down?" Her mother's eyes filled with compassion. "I don't know, sweetheart. Their house was severely damaged. They might have to stay away for quite some time." "How long?" Billy's lower lip trembled. "A week? A month?" "I don't know," Charlotte repeated gently. "But I promise we'll try to find out where they've gone so you can write to William." But despite her mother's efforts, no one seemed to know exactly where the Banks family had fled. Some said New York, others mentioned relatives in Pennsylvania. With communication systems damaged by the flood, tracking down evacuees proved nearly impossible. Days turned into weeks, and Billy wrote letter after letter, addressing them to William Banks at various possible locations. Each was returned unopened. She visited their oak tree daily, hoping against hope that William would somehow be there, waiting for her with his crooked smile and quiet loyalty. On the 100th day after the flood, Billy carved a message beneath their initials on the oak tree. "I'm waiting. Remember our promise." Then she sat at the base of the tree and cried until she had no tears left. While miles away, William unpacked his meager belongings in his uncle's cramped New York apartment. The tin box containing their promise hidden safely beneath his new bed in this strange, noisy city that already felt nothing like home. Chapter 3. 13 years later. The bus rolled into Willow Creek just as the sun was setting, bathing the small town in golden light. William Banks pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the window, his heart racing as familiar landmarks came into view. 13 years had passed since the flood that tore him away from this place, yet somehow it felt both completely foreign and achingly familiar. "Willow Creek Station," the driver announced. "End of the line." William gathered his worn leather duffel bag and stepped off the bus, inhaling deeply. The air smelled different here, cleaner, softer, infused with pine and wildflowers instead of exhaust and concrete. His hand instinctively touched the inside pocket of his jacket, where a folded letter confirmed the job he'd secured with a regional architectural firm in the neighboring town. It had taken years of determination to overcome his dyslexia, to graduate with honors despite the reading difficulties that had once made teachers label him as slow. The station was nearly empty. William adjusted the strap of his bag on his shoulder and began walking, letting muscle memory guide his feet toward the town center. Main Street had changed. Some storefronts were new, others had disappeared, but the essential character remained intact. The hardware store where his father had bought supplies still stood on the corner, though the sign now read Murphy's instead of Johnson's. The ice cream parlor where he and Billy had spent their allowance on summer afternoons had transformed into a coffee shop. But the oak tree, their oak tree, would still be standing in the park. William checked into the small hotel at the edge of town, avoiding the curious gaze of the receptionist. He wasn't ready for questions, for the inevitable, "Aren't you Robert Banks, boy?" That would come once people recognized him. In his room, he unpacked methodically. Clothes in the dresser, toiletries in the bathroom, sketchbooks on the desk. Last, he removed a small tin box from the bottom of his bag, its surface dented and scratched from years of travel. Inside, protected by tissue paper that had yellowed with age, lay the drawing he'd preserved for 13 years, 2 stick figures holding hands, a childish promise written beneath them. Beside it lay a collection of neatly folded notes, the letters he'd written to Billy over the years but never been allowed to send. Sleep eluded him that night. He lay awake watching shadows move across the ceiling, rehearsing what he might say when he finally saw her again. How could words possibly bridge the chasm of 13 years? Morning came with a clarity that only small-town skies could produce. William dressed carefully in dark jeans and a blue button-down. Construction work during summers in New York had broadened his shoulders and strengthened his hands. His voice had deepened, his jawline sharpened. Only his eyes remained unchanged, still the same deep brown that Billy had once said reminded her of chocolate. The coffee shop on Main Street seemed as good a place as any to start. He ordered a black coffee and chose a table near the window, positioning himself to watch the street while remaining partially hidden. He wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. First, he needed to see her. 3 hours and 4 cups of coffee later, his patience was rewarded. She walked past the window, her copper hair catching the sunlight, and William's heart stopped. Billy. She was no longer the gap-toothed girl with scraped knees and pigtails, but a young woman with confidence in her stride and grace in her movements. Her hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she wore a simple sundress that emphasized her slender frame. Without conscious thought, William found himself standing, moving toward the door. He stepped onto the sidewalk just as she was passing, their shoulders nearly brushing. "Excuse me," she said automatically, glancing up at him with a polite smile that held no recognition. William froze, the carefully rehearsed words evaporating from his mind. She was looking right at him, right through him, with no flicker of familiarity in her green eyes. The girl who had once known him better than anyone now regarded him as a stranger. "No problem," he managed to say, his voice rougher than intended. She nodded and continued on her way, her attention already elsewhere. William watched her go, rooted to the spot, a hollowness expanding in his chest. He had prepared himself for many reactions, joy, anger, resentment, even indifference, but not for this complete lack of recognition. For the next week, William observed Billy from a distance, learning the patterns of her daily life. She worked at her mother's real estate office, the largest in town, according to the impressive sign outside. She jogged each morning along the river path, bought coffee from the shop on Main Street every afternoon, and sometimes sat alone on a bench in the park, reading. Not once did she approach the oak tree. On his 8th day back in Willow Creek, William finally gathered his courage. He walked into the real estate office, the bell above the door announcing his entrance. Billy looked up from her desk, professional smile already in place. "Good morning. Welcome to Kalisha Real Estate. How can I help you?" William swallowed hard. "I'm looking for a property. Something small, preferably near the water." "Of course," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I'm Billy Kalisha. I'd be happy to show you what we have available." "William," he said, watching for any reaction. "William Banks." A flicker of something, interest perhaps, but not recognition, crossed her face. Banks. That name sounds familiar. Did your family live in Willow Creek before? The question hit him like a physical blow. Not only did she not recognize his face, but his name, once so intertwined with hers, now triggered only the vaguest sense of familiarity. "Yes," he said quietly. "A long time ago. We left after the flood." "Oh, the flood of '04. We lost so many families then." She tilted her head, studying him with polite curiosity. "I might have known you when we were children." Might have known you. The words echoed painfully in his mind. They had been inseparable for 3 years, had shared every secret, every fear, every joy. Now he was just a hazy, maybe memory. "It's possible," William managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "It was a small town." "Still is," she laughed, the sound achingly familiar yet somehow new. "Now, about that property." He went through the motions of discussing real estate, nodding at appropriate intervals as she showed him listings. All the while his mind raced. She wasn't pretending. The confusion in her eyes when he'd said his name had been genuine. Somehow, impossibly, Billy had forgotten him. "This one might be perfect," she was saying, turning the screen to show him a small cottage near the river. "It needs some work, but it's in your price range and has water access." "I'll take it," William said impulsively. "Don't you want to see it first?" "I trust your judgment." And he did, still after all these years. She blinked, then smiled. A real smile this time, not the professional mask she'd worn before. "Well, that's a first. Most clients want to inspect every inch before making an offer." "I'm not most clients," William said, holding her gaze longer than was strictly necessary. Something shifted in her expression. Not recognition, but curiosity. "No," she agreed softly. "I don't think you are." As he signed the preliminary paperwork, their fingers brushed briefly. William felt the contact like an electric shock, but Billy showed no reaction. To her, he was just another client, a stranger who had walked into her office on an ordinary Tuesday. Outside on the sidewalk, he paused to collect himself. The encounter had shaken him more than he'd expected. He had returned to Willow Creek with the hope that Billy might have waited, might have remembered their promise. Instead, he'd found that in her mind he had ceased to exist altogether. Yet as he walked back to his hotel, determination replaced disappointment. She might not recognize him now, but he would find a way to make her remember. 13 years had not diminished his feelings for her. He would not give up, not when he'd come so far, waited so long. No matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other. Billy might have forgotten, but William remembered enough for both of them. And somehow, he would help her remember too. Chapter 4. Ships Passing in the Night. You've been in town for nearly 2 weeks, and you're just now telling me? Evelyn Harris gaped at Billy across their shared lunch table, her sandwich forgotten. William Banks is back in Willow Creek, and you didn't immediately call me? Billy sipped her iced tea, trying to appear nonchalant despite her friend's dramatics. Why would I? I barely remember him, Evie. We were kids. Barely remember him? Evelyn's eyebrows shot toward her hairline. Billy Kalisha, you spent most of high school searching yearbooks from neighboring towns trying to find him. You convinced your mother to check property records in 3 states. You've been carrying a torch for this boy since 3rd grade. That's different, Billy protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. I'm looking for my William, the one I knew. This man who walked into the office last week. He's just someone with the same name. Are you sure? Evelyn pressed. Did you ask him anything about his childhood here? Billy shifted uncomfortably. That would be unprofessional. He's a client who could be the boy you've been searching for. Now you're being ridiculous, Billy said, though the words lacked conviction. Besides, he doesn't look anything like I remember. You were 8 when he left, Billy. Of course he doesn't look the same. Billy nodded, more to appease her friend than out of genuine agreement. She'd spent so many years searching for her childhood friend that the possibility of him simply walking back into her life seemed too convenient, too perfect. After lunch, Billy walked to the park, drawn to the oak tree as she often was when her thoughts became too tangled. The massive tree stood exactly as it always had, its bark a bit more gnarled. She ran her fingers over the carving she'd made so long ago, BK plus WB inside a heart, and beneath it, the message she'd added after the flood. I'm waiting. Remember our promise. The tree had been her sanctuary during her darkest moments, after her father's death when she was 12, during the lonely years of high school when she'd felt so different from her peers with their casual relationships and easy laughter. While they'd been concerned with dances and dating, she'd been researching town records and scanning social media for any trace of a dark-haired boy who'd once promised to find his way back to her. Talking to trees now? Billy whirled around, startled. William Banks stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, the afternoon sunlight catching in his dark hair. It's a very good listener, she replied, quickly stepping away from the carved initials. Are you following me, Mr. Banks? William, please, he corrected with a small smile. And no, I come here to sketch. He gestured to the sketchbook tucked under his arm. The light is perfect this time of day. You're an artist? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Of sorts, architectural illustration mostly. He took a step closer, his gaze briefly flickering to the tree trunk where her hand had been. Do you come here often? Sometimes, she admitted, when I need to think. And what are you thinking about today? His voice was gentle, encouraging. Billy hesitated. The past, I suppose, childhood memories. Good ones, I hope. Mostly, she said, but some are complicated. William nodded, understanding in his eyes. The best ones usually are. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the rustling of leaves overhead. Billy studied him covertly. He was handsome, tall and broad-shouldered, with strong hands, but it was his eyes that kept drawing her attention. Warm brown, thoughtful, somehow both familiar and unknown. "Your closing documents came in this morning," she said finally, retreating to professional topics. "You can stop by the office tomorrow to sign them." "I'll be there," he promised. Then, with a hint of hesitation, "Would you like to have coffee afterward? To celebrate my official move to Willow Creek?" The invitation caught her off guard. "I don't usually socialize with clients." "I won't be a client after tomorrow," he pointed out. "Just a neighbor." Billy found herself nodding before she'd fully decided to accept. "All right, coffee, but just as neighbors." His smile widened, transforming his serious face. "Just as neighbors," he agreed. "Absolutely not." Charlotte Kalicia's voice was firm. "The Founders' Day Charity Gala is our biggest networking event of the year. You need to be focused on making connections, not entertaining some newcomer." "He's not just some newcomer, Mother. He's a new homeowner in Willow Creek." Billy leaned against the doorframe of her mother's office, frustration building. 2 weeks had passed since their coffee, which had extended into dinner when neither had been ready to end the conversation. "A very small client," Charlotte noted. "That cottage hardly qualifies as a significant sale." "That's not the point." Charlotte studied her daughter. At 50, she remained striking, her copper hair, so like Billy's own, now streaked with elegant silver. Widowed young, she'd built Kalicia Real Estate into the town's premier agency through sheer determination. For a moment, something flickered in Charlotte's eyes, a softness quickly masked by practicality. "I just want security for you, Billy. After your father died." She paused, composing herself. "I know what it's like to have your world collapse overnight, to wake up and find everything you counted on suddenly gone." "Is there something you're not telling me about this William Banks?" she asked shrewdly. Billy hesitated. "His name? It's the same as my childhood friend, the one who left after the flood." Charlotte's expression softened marginally. "Darling, we've been through this. That's a coincidence, nothing more." "I know, but—" "No buts," Charlotte interrupted. "I've watched you spend years chasing a ghost, turning down perfectly suitable young men because they couldn't compete with your memory of a boy who probably doesn't even remember Willow Creek, let alone you." The words stung. "That's not fair." "Life rarely is." Charlotte's tone gentled. "Jonathan Pierce has asked about you again. His father's company is expanding their real estate division, and an alliance between our families would be advantageous." "I'm not interested in Jonathan Pierce," Billy said flatly. "I'm not suggesting you marry him tomorrow," Charlotte sighed. "Just that you give him a chance. He'll be at the gala. Dance with him. Talk to him. That's all I ask." Billy recognized the tone. Her mother wouldn't budge. "Fine. One dance, but I'm still inviting William to the gala," Charlotte conceded with a gracious nod. "As you wish. But remember, Billy, dreams and memories make poor foundations for a future. Reality, no matter how imperfect, is always more reliable." William glanced around the crowded ballroom, feeling out of place among Willow Creek's elite. The Founders' Day Charity Gala was apparently the social event of the season, held in the renovated Grand Hotel. Its crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the gathered townspeople, most of whom still regarded William with curious glances. He tugged at his tie, wishing he'd declined Billy's invitation, but the prospect of spending an evening in her company had been too tempting to resist, even if it meant enduring the scrutiny of strangers and the barely concealed hostility of Charlotte Kalicia. William found refuge near the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching Billy from across the room. She was stunning in a midnight blue dress that made her copper hair seem to flame in contrast. "She's something, isn't she?" William turned to find a man about his age standing beside him, following his gaze to Billy. The stranger was immaculately dressed in a custom suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his smile confident. Jonathan Pierce, the man introduced himself, extending a manicured hand, and you're William Banks, the new owner of the old Miller cottage. William shook the offered hand. Word travels fast in small towns, especially when you've been seen having coffee with the most eligible bachelorette in the county, Jonathan replied. Consider this friendly advice from a local. You're aiming high. The Kalishas are practically Willow Creek royalty. I wasn't aware I was aiming at all, William said carefully, disliking the proprietary tone in the other man's voice. We're just friends. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. For now, perhaps, but I've seen how you look at her. Can't blame you. I've been trying to get her attention since high school. She's difficult to impress. Or maybe she just knows her own mind, William suggested. A mind too occupied with fairy tales, Jonathan said dismissively. Did she tell you about her obsession? The lost love she's been pining for all these years? William's heart began to race. What obsession? Some boy she knew as a kid, left after the flood. She's been looking for him ever since, turning down every man in town, because they don't measure up to her memory of perfect little William. The whiskey glass nearly slipped from William's suddenly numb fingers. She had been looking for him. All these years, while he worked and saved and dreamed of returning to her, she had been searching for him too. Their promise hadn't been forgotten after all, only his face, his grown-up self. Excuse me, William muttered, setting down his glass and moving away from Jonathan, needing space to process this revelation. He made his way onto the terrace, the cool evening air a welcome relief from the ballroom's stuffiness. Stars glittered overhead, the same stars they'd counted as children lying beneath the oak tree. There you are, Billy's voice came from behind him. I thought you might have left. William turned to face her, seeing her with new eyes. You've been looking for me, he said softly. Confusion crossed her face. What? All these years, you've been searching for William Banks. For me. She stiffened. Jonathan has a big mouth and a talent for exaggeration. Is it true? William pressed, stepping closer. I dot. Billy hesitated, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence. I've been looking for a childhood friend, yes. But not you, not the you standing here now, the boy I knew when I was 8. What if they're the same person? They're not, she said firmly. I would know. I would feel it. Would you? William challenged gently. People change, Billy. 13 years is a long time. Not that much, she insisted. Some connections can't be broken. Like a promise made under an oak tree, he suggested. Billy's eyes widened. Before she could respond, Charlotte appeared at the terrace doorway. Billy, darling, they're about to announce the auction winners, and Jonathan is looking for you. You promised him a dance. Billy glanced between her mother and William, conflict evident in her expression. I'll be right there. We'll finish this conversation later, Billy promised, her voice lower. Meet me tomorrow, the oak tree, noon. I'll be there, William said, hope rising in his chest as he watched her walk away. Chapter 5. The Charity Gala. Music filled the Grand Hotel ballroom as Willow Creek's most prominent citizens celebrated another successful Founders' Day charity gala. Billy stood near the ornate fountain, half listening to Jonathan Pierce's explanation of his father's latest real estate acquisition, while her gaze continually drifted to the door. Are you expecting someone? Jonathan finally asked. I invited a new resident, Billy admitted. I thought it would be a good way for him to meet people. Jonathan's smile tightened. How thoughtful of you. Always the perfect hostess, just like your mother. The comparison made Billy bristle. Being compared to Charlotte Kalisha was something that happened frequently, and while she admired her mother's strength, Billy had spent much of her adult life trying to establish her own identity. There he is, she said, relieved to spot William entering the ballroom. He looked different in his charcoal suit, more polished than usual, yet somehow still out of place among the town's elite. Her heart fluttered as their eyes met across the room. "Excuse me," she murmured to Jonathan, already moving away. "I should welcome him." William smiled as she approached, the expression transforming his serious face. "You came," she said, reaching him at last. "I said I would." "Yes, but—" Billy gestured at the glittering crowd. "This isn't exactly a casual gathering." "I wanted to see you," he said simply, his directness catching her off guard. The setting was secondary. Heat crept up Billy's neck. Conversations with William felt like resuming a dialogue that had merely been paused, not ended. It was disconcerting. "Let me introduce you to some people," she offered, guiding him through a series of introductions. She watched with admiration as he navigated the social waters with quiet dignity, despite being the outsider that sparked curious glances. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked after they'd completed a circuit of the room. "Please," William agreed, loosening his tie slightly. "I could use a moment away from all the scrutiny." Billy laughed. "Small towns. Everyone wants to know your business." "And what have you told them about me?" William asked as they reached the bar. "That you're my newest client, a newcomer with excellent taste in real estate agents." "Is that all I am to you? A client?" His voice held a note of challenge that made Billy look at him more closely. "I don't know what you are to me," she admitted honestly. "That's what makes this strange." William accepted 2 champagne flutes from the bartender, handing one to Billy. "Strange how?" She hesitated. "I feel like I should know you better than I do. Like we've met before, even though that's impossible." Something flickered in William's eyes. Hope, perhaps. But before he could respond, Charlotte Kalisha appeared at Billy's elbow. "There you are, darling. Jonathan is looking for you. You promised him the first dance." Her smile, when it turned to William, was polite but cool. "Mr. Banks, how lovely of you to join us." "Very welcome," William confirmed, matching her cordial tone. "You've raised a remarkably kind daughter, Mrs. Kalisha." "Yes, well, she has many admirable qualities," Charlotte agreed, her hand firmly on Billy's arm. "If you'll excuse us, Jonathan is waiting." Billy shot William an apologetic glance as her mother steered her toward the dance floor, where Jonathan stood expectantly. "You're being too obvious, Billy," Charlotte murmured. "Everyone is noticing how much attention you're giving to this newcomer." "I'm being friendly to someone who knows virtually no one in town," Billy defended. "That's hardly a scandal." "It becomes one when you ignore Jonathan Pierce, whose family owns half the commercial property in the county, in favor of a man who purchased a rundown cottage with questionable financing." Billy stopped short. "You checked his finances?" Charlotte's expression was unapologetic. "I check everyone who takes an interest in my daughter." With that, Charlotte glided away, leaving Billy to paste on a smile as Jonathan's arms encircled her waist for their promised dance. Over his shoulder, she sought William in the crowd, finding him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You seem distracted tonight," Jonathan observed, following her gaze. "Is it because of him? The new guy?" "His name is William," Billy corrected automatically. "And no, I'm just tired. I heard that you're showing him properties around town. Seems like you've been spending a lot of time together." "It's my job, Jonathan. I show properties to people." "And is it also your job to have dinner with them at Angelo's? Because several people mentioned seeing you two there last week, looking rather cozy." Billy stiffened in his arms. "I wasn't aware that my dinner companions were subject to town approval." As they rounded the bend in the dance, Billy's heart skipped. What did she really know about William Banks? That he was kind, thoughtful, and made her feel understood in a way few people ever had. That his eyes held secrets she couldn't decipher, and his smile made her heart race. That something about him felt like coming home, even though they'd only just met. The song ended, and Billy stepped back with a polite nod. "Thank you for the dance, Jonathan." "Billy, wait," he said, catching her hand. "Your mother mentioned that you might be interested in seeing the new development plans for the lakeside property. My father has the preliminary drawings in his office. Perhaps we could stop by tomorrow." His intention was transparent. Jonathan Pierce was handsome, successful, and from a family her mother approved of. On paper, he was perfect. In reality, he had never made her feel a fraction of what she felt when William simply looked at her. "I have plans tomorrow," she said gently. "Perhaps another time." As Billy made her way across the ballroom, she scanned the crowd for William, worried he might have left. The thought bothered her more than it should have. A gentle hand touched her elbow. "Looking for someone?" William stood behind her, two fresh glasses of champagne in his hands. Relief flooded through her. "I thought you'd left," she admitted, accepting the offered glass. "Without saying goodbye?" He shook his head. "I wouldn't do that to you." The lights dimmed and the band began playing a slower melody. Around them, couples moved toward the dance floor. "Would you dance with me?" William asked softly. "Just once, before I leave." Billy hesitated, aware of her mother's disapproving gaze from across the room, of Jonathan's watchful eyes. For once, she decided not to care. "Yes," she said, setting down her champagne. "I'd like that." William led her to the dance floor, his hand warm against the small of her back. As they began to move together, Billy was struck by how naturally they fit, as if their bodies remembered a harmony their minds had forgotten. His eyes never left hers, dark and intent, searching for something she couldn't name. "What are you looking for?" she whispered, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. "Recognition," he answered honestly. "I've been hoping you might see me, Billy. Really see me." "I'm looking at you right now," she said, confused. William's smile held a hint of sadness. "Looking isn't the same as seeing, and you think I'm not him?" "I know you're not," she said firmly. "I would recognize him." "After 13 years," William challenged softly, "people change, Billy. They grow up." She turned to study him, really looking at him for the first time, his dark eyes serious beneath straight brows, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he tilted his head. There was something familiar in the gesture, something that made her heart skip a beat. "Tell me about him," William requested. "You're William." Billy hesitated, then found herself speaking, the words flowing easily after years of keeping these memories close to her heart. He was quieter than the other boys, thoughtful. He struggled with reading, but he could draw beautifully. Birds in flight, the oak tree, me. We spent every afternoon here doing homework or just talking. He was my best friend. William listened intently, something like hunger in his expression. What happened? The flood came. His family left overnight. I woke up and he was just gone. Billy's voice caught. I waited for him to come back. I'm still waiting. What if he did come back? William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What if he's been trying to tell you? Before she could answer, the sky darkened suddenly. They looked up to see storm clouds gathering with alarming speed. "We should go," William said, already packing the remains of their lunch. "It's going to pour." They barely made it to William's car before the skies opened. Rain hammered against the roof as they sat, watching the downpour, the park quickly emptying of people seeking shelter. "I should get home," Billy said, though she made no move to ask him to drive her. "Or," William suggested, "we could wait it out. I know a place." The impulsiveness that had always been both Billy's strength and weakness took over. "Show me." 20 minutes later, they were laughing and soaked as they ran from the car to the entrance of the Laughing Duck, a small pub on the outskirts of town that Billy had somehow never visited, despite living in Willow Creek her entire life. "How did you find this place?" she asked as they settled at a corner table, a candle flickering between them. William smiled mysteriously. "I have my ways." The pub was cozy and dim, filled with the smell of good food and the sound of old jazz playing softly in the background. As the evening progressed, Billy found herself relaxing, the wine warming her blood and loosening her usually careful guard. With William, conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and moments of surprising connection. "I've never told anyone that," she admitted after sharing a particularly embarrassing childhood story involving her mother's prize roses and a failed attempt at perfume making. "Your secret is safe with me," William promised, his eyes crinkling with amusement. "Though I may never look at rose petals the same way again." Outside, the storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it had intensified, the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the rain-drenched streets. "I should get you home," William said finally, noticing the late hour. "Your mother will be worried." Billy laughed. "I'm 21, not 16. Besides, Charlotte is hosting the post-gala brunch at the country club. She won't be home until much later." William raised an eyebrow. "Still, it's getting late. Are you trying to get rid of me, William Banks?" Billy leaned forward, emboldened by wine and the strange intimacy the storm had created between them. "Never," he said, the word carrying more weight than perhaps he intended. As they drove through the storm-lashed streets, Billy directed him on a meandering route that took them past familiar landmarks: her elementary school, the library where she'd spent countless hours searching yearbooks from neighboring towns, the small chapel where her father's funeral had been held. "I've never shown anyone all these places," she admitted, as they idled outside the chapel. "They're pieces of me, I suppose." "Thank you for sharing them," William said, his voice serious in the darkness. Billy stared at the chapel, memories washing over her. "I used to come here as a child, not just for services, but to sit and think. After my father died, and then again after the flood took everything." "Not everything," William said softly. "You're still here, still waiting." Something in his tone made Billy turn to look at him, really look at him, as rain drummed on the car roof. In the dim light, with shadows playing across his features, he seemed almost familiar, a ghost from her past overlaid on this present stranger. "Let's go inside," she suggested impulsively. "The chapel? It's nearly midnight. Mr. Grayson never locks it. He says God doesn't keep office hours." Billy was already opening her door, the rain immediately plastering her hair to her head. William followed her up the path to the small, whitewashed building. True to her word, the door opened when she tried it, revealing the hushed interior lit only by a few votive candles near the altar. "I came here the day after William left," Billy whispered as they stood in the center aisle, water dripping from their clothes onto the worn wooden floor. "I prayed he would come back. Every Sunday for a year, I lit a candle and asked God to bring him home." William's breathing seemed uneven in the silence. "And now I think some prayers take longer to answer than others." The candlelight cast soft, dancing shadows around them as they moved deeper into the chapel. At the altar, Billy knelt to light a fresh candle, her hands trembling slightly. "For what it's worth," William said, kneeling beside her, "I think he tried to come back to you. I think he never stopped trying." Billy turned to him, their faces close in the flickering light. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because that's what I would do," he answered simply, "if someone like you were waiting for me." The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with unspoken possibilities. Billy found herself leaning closer, drawn by a gravity she couldn't explain and didn't want to resist. When their lips met, it felt like recognition, like finding something she hadn't realized was lost. William's hands cradled her face with exquisite tenderness, as if she might shatter under his touch. The kiss deepened, years of longing and searching, crystallizing into this one perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Billy felt as if the world had shifted on its axis. Everything looked the same, but something fundamental had changed. "I should take you home," William whispered against her hair, though his arms remained firmly around her. "Not yet," Billy pleaded. "The night isn't over." Hours later, as dawn broke over Willow Creek, they stood swaying together in the center of the small chapel, dancing to music only they could hear. Somewhere in the night, amid laughter and increasingly bold kisses, amid confessions whispered in the darkness and promises sealed with intertwined fingers, they had found their way to the chapel's registry book. On an impulse born of wine, candlelight, and a connection neither could fully explain, they had signed their names, William Banks and Billy Kalisha, on a marriage certificate that Mr. Grayson, roused from his apartment behind the chapel, had provided with amused indulgence. "You young people," he had chuckled, adjusting his spectacles. "Always in such a rush." Now, as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden floor where they danced, Billy felt a contentment she had never known. In William's arms, she had found a peace that had eluded her for 13 years. "No regrets?" he asked softly, his breath warm against her ear. Billy looked up at him, at this man who had appeared in her life so suddenly, yet felt so right, and shook her head. None. Together they walked out into the clear morning light, the storm having passed during their night of discovery. A gold band, borrowed from the chapel's lost and found box, gleamed on Billy's finger, tangible proof of the improbable journey they had begun together. Their night together had been innocent, despite the implications of marriage. Tender kisses and whispered conversations in the chapel, falling asleep holding hands in the hotel room William had booked when the storm made it impossible to drive Billy home safely. The connection they'd forged was emotional rather than physical, a joining of souls rediscovering each other. Neither could have predicted how quickly that journey would derail, or how the light of day would transform their night of magic into something altogether different. Chapter 7. The Morning After. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains, painting warm patterns across Billy's closed eyelids. She stirred, her head pounding with the unmistakable throb of a hangover. The sheets beneath her were soft and unfamiliar, and she was wearing, she cracked one eye open to check, a man's t-shirt that definitely wasn't hers. Memories from the previous night flickered through her mind. The storm, the pub, the chapel. William. Her heart raced as fragments returned, candlelight reflecting in his dark eyes, his gentle hands cradling her face, signing her name with unsteady fingers on an official-looking document. Something glinted on her left hand, catching the morning light. A ring. Simple and gold, slightly too big for her finger. Panic surged through her veins, fully awakening her foggy brain. The bathroom door opened and William emerged, a towel slung low around his hips, his hair damp from the shower. He smiled when he saw she was awake, and something about that smile, so genuine, so full of quiet joy, made her panic intensify. "Good morning," he said softly, moving toward the bed. "How did you sleep?" Billy sat up abruptly, clutching the sheet to her chest despite being fully clothed in his t-shirt. "What happened last night?" William's smile faltered. "You don't remember?" "I remember parts," she admitted, her voice higher than usual. "The storm, the chapel. But after that, it's blurry." He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain distance between them. "We got married, Billy." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and yet undeniable. The ring on her finger suddenly felt heavier, more significant. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We can't be married. We barely know each other." "Mr. Grayson seemed to think otherwise," William said gently. "He signed the certificate himself." Billy's breath came in short, shallow gasps. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She had just met this man, this stranger who had walked into her life less than a month ago. "This is a mistake," she said, scrambling out of bed, putting as much distance between them as the hotel room would allow. "A drunk mistake that we need to fix immediately." William's expression darkened with hurt. "Billy, please, let's talk about this." "Talk about what?" Her voice rose with panic. "We got drunk and did something stupid. There's nothing to talk about except how quickly we can get this annulled." "It wasn't stupid to me," William said quietly, his calm only feeding her growing hysteria. "How can you say that? You don't even know me." "I know you better than you think," he insisted, taking a step toward her. Billy backed away until she hit the wall. "Stay away from me," she warned, her voice trembling. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, coming to town and targeting me like this." "Targeting you?" Hurt flashed across his face. "Is that what you think this is?" "What else could it be? Normal people don't marry someone they just met." "We didn't just meet," William said, his voice so low she almost didn't hear it. "What are you talking about?" "Billy, it's me." He took another step closer, his eyes pleading. "It's William. Your William." The claim was so absurd that Billy actually laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "My William was 8 years old. You're a stranger who happens to have the same name." "I'm not a stranger," he insisted. "I'm the boy who helped you catch fireflies in jars. I'm the boy who couldn't read the word mountain until you drew a picture next to it. I'm the boy who promised to find his way back to you under that oak tree." Each detail hit Billy like a physical blow. Those were things only her William would know, private moments they had shared as children. But it wasn't possible. This man couldn't be her William. She would have recognized him. "You're lying," she accused, though doubt had begun to creep into her voice. "You must have heard those stories from someone in town." "Who?" William challenged. "Who would know about the drawing you made for me, about the way you helped me read?" "I don't know, but you can't be him." Billy's voice cracked as she shook her head vehemently. "I would know my William anywhere." "Would you?" William's voice was gentle but insistent. "After 13 years. People change, Billy. They grow up." Panic gave way to anger, hot and defensive. "If you're really him, why didn't you tell me the moment you saw me? Why this elaborate charade? Why let me believe you were a stranger?" "I tried," William said, running a frustrated hand through his damp hair. "That first day in your office, I told you my name. I watched your face for any sign of recognition, but there was nothing. You looked right through me. So instead of telling me the truth, you what? Decided to make me fall for you without knowing who you really were. To trick me into marrying you." "It wasn't like that," William protested. "I wanted you to see me, to recognize me on your own. Last night I thought maybe you finally had." "Well, I didn't," Billy snapped, yanking the ring from her finger. "And I don't believe you now. My William would never manipulate me like this." She threw the ring at him, a glint of gold arcing through the air before bouncing off his chest and rolling under the bed. "How dare you touch me?" she continued, her voice rising with each word. "I don't even know you." "Billy, please, I love someone else." The words escaped before she could consider their impact. "I'll take legal action against you for this." William froze, the color draining from his face. "Someone else?" "Yes," Billy lied, desperate to hurt him as she was hurting. "My William, the real William, not whatever elaborate con you're trying to pull." "Billy, it's me," he said again, his voice thick with emotion. "William Banks." But she was beyond listening. Gathering her scattered clothes, she retreated to the bathroom, slamming the door between them. With shaking hands, she changed out of his t-shirt, scrubbing at her skin as if she could erase the memory of his touch. In the mirror, a wild-eyed stranger stared back at her, flushed cheeks, tangled hair, smudged mascara beneath frantic eyes. What had she done? When she finally emerged, fully dressed but no more composed, William sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. He looked up as she entered, his expression one of such raw pain that she almost wavered. "I'm leaving," she announced, gathering her purse and shoes. "I don't want to see you again." Whatever this was, it's over. "Billy, don't go like this," William pleaded, rising to his feet. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she cut him off. "You're a liar who took advantage of me when I was vulnerable. Stay away from me or I'll tell everyone in town what you did." His face hardened at the threat, pride visibly warring with desperation. "Is that what you really think happened?" "I don't know what happened," Billy admitted, her hand on the doorknob. "And I don't want to know. I just want to forget all of this." "You've been forgetting for 13 years," William said quietly. "Maybe that's the real problem." The statement was too close to a truth Billy wasn't ready to face. Without another word, she wrenched the door open and fled, not stopping until she reached the lobby. Outside, the morning was bright and clear, as if the storm had washed the world clean. But inside, Billy felt nothing but turmoil. She walked home in yesterday's clothes, ignoring the curious glances of early morning joggers and dog walkers. Her mind raced, cycling between anger, confusion, and a terrible, gnawing doubt. What if he was telling the truth? What if the man she had just fled really was her William? It wasn't possible. Her William would never have hidden his identity from her. Her William would have run to her the moment he returned to Willow Creek, would have swept her into his arms and told her he had kept their promise. By the time she reached her mother's house, Billy had convinced herself that William, this new William, was nothing but a manipulative liar who had somehow learned details about her past and used them to get close to her. Perhaps he was after her family's money, or access to prime real estate listings, or simply enjoyed toying with people's emotions. It didn't matter. She would get the impromptu marriage annulled, avoid him until he inevitably left town, and continue her search for the real William Banks, the boy who had promised to find his way back to her. The boy who would never have let her walk away. Chapter 8. Searching for the Truth. William stared at the closed door long after Billy had fled through it, the echo of her accusations still ringing in his ears. How had everything gone so wrong? Last night had felt like a miracle, the culmination of 13 years of waiting, working, dreaming of this reunion. Now it lay in ruins around him, his identity rejected, his truth dismissed as manipulation. "Someone else," he murmured, the words like knives. She loved someone else, yet that someone was him, or at least the memory of him, preserved in childhood amber while he had grown and changed in the harsh reality of New York. How could he compete with a ghost of himself? The ring glinted under the bed where it had rolled after she threw it at him. William knelt to retrieve it, turning the simple gold band between his fingers. It had felt right last night. Everything had felt right. How could something so perfect shatter so completely? With mechanical movements, William showered and dressed, his mind racing through possibilities. There had to be a way to make her see the truth, to help her reconcile the boy she remembered with the man he had become. He needed proof, something more tangible than shared memories that she could dismiss as hearsay or research. Something that only the real William Banks would have. The tin box. Billy sat in her mother's garden, a cup of tea growing cold beside her as she stared unseeingly at the roses. She had snuck into the house before Charlotte returned from her post-gala brunch, showered until her skin was pink, and changed into fresh clothes. Outwardly, she looked composed. Inwardly, she was in turmoil. "There you are," Charlotte's voice broke through her thoughts. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Where were you last night?" Billy forced a smile. I stayed at Evelyn's after the gala. We got to talking, and it got too late to drive home. The lie came easily, though guilt twisted in her stomach. She had never lied to her mother before, at least not about anything significant. Charlotte studied her daughter's face with shrewd eyes. "Is everything all right? You seem distracted." "Just tired," Billy assured her. "The gala was exhausting." "Jonathan Pierce was asking about you," Charlotte said, sitting elegantly in the adjacent garden chair. "He mentioned you disappeared rather suddenly." "With William Banks." Billy's cup clattered against its saucer. "Did he?" "Yes." He seemed quite concerned. Charlotte's tone was neutral, but her gaze was penetrating. "Should I be concerned as well?" "There's nothing between William Banks and me," Billy said firmly, the declaration feeling both true and false simultaneously. "You don't need to worry." Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. "Evelyn. Emergency coffee needed. La Petite Café in 30 minutes." Billy responded quickly. "Be there in 20." She needed someone to talk to, someone who wasn't her mother, someone who might understand the impossible situation she found herself in. "You got married." Evelyn's shriek drew startled glances from nearby cafe patrons. "To a man you just met? Are you insane?" "Keep your voice down," Billy hissed, glancing around nervously. "And I didn't just meet him. We've known each other for almost a month." "Oh, well, in that case," Evelyn rolled her eyes dramatically. "Billy, what were you thinking?" "I wasn't," Billy admitted miserably. "We were caught in the storm. We had wine, one thing led to another." "So it was just a drunken mistake?" Evelyn asked, stirring her latte absently. "That doesn't sound like you." "It wasn't just that," Billy confessed, her voice dropping. "There was something about him, Evie. Something familiar and right. Until this morning when he claimed to be my William." Evelyn's spoon clattered against her cup. "Your William? The one you've been searching for?" "He says he is. He knew things, Evie. Private things about our childhood that no one else would know." "Like what?" "Like how I used to help him with reading by drawing pictures next to difficult words. The night we caught fireflies in jars. Little moments that weren't significant to anyone but us." Evelyn leaned forward, her expression serious. "Billy, do you think there's any chance he's telling the truth?" "I don't know," Billy whispered, tears threatening. "If he is, why didn't I recognize him? And why didn't he just tell me from the beginning?" "He says he did try to tell you," Evelyn pointed out. "And as for recognizing him, Billy, you were 8 when he left. People change a lot between 8 and 21. But wouldn't I feel something? Some immediate connection or recognition?" "Maybe you did," Evelyn suggested gently. "Maybe that's why you were drawn to him from the beginning. Maybe that's why you felt comfortable enough to marry him after knowing him for such a short time." The possibility hung between them, too frightening for Billy to fully examine. If this William really was her William, then she had just rejected the very person she had spent years searching for. "What do I do now?" Billy asked, desperate for guidance. "You need to talk to him," Evelyn said firmly. "Calmly, soberly, and with an open mind. Ask him questions only the real William would know the answers to. See if his story checks out." William arrived at Rosewood Nursing Home with a small bouquet of daisies. Finding Mrs. Peterson had been a stroke of luck. A chance conversation with the barista at La Petite Café had revealed that Billy's former third-grade teacher was now residing at Willow Creek's premier assisted living facility. "William Banks," Mrs. Peterson exclaimed when he introduced himself, her wrinkled face lighting up with recognition. "My goodness, you've grown." Relief flooded through him. She remembered. "Yes, ma'am. It's been a long time." 13 years, she nodded, accepting the daisies with a pleased smile. "Since the flood. I always wondered what became of you." William settled into the chair beside her. I've been in New York. It was difficult at first, but I never forgot Willow Creek. Or Billy. Mrs. Peterson's eyes softened. Ah, Billy Kalisha. You two were inseparable. She took your leaving very hard, you know. I'm starting to understand how hard, William said quietly. Mrs. Peterson, I need your help. Billy doesn't recognize me. She doesn't believe I'm the same William she knew as a child. The elderly teacher studied him thoughtfully. People change, dear, especially between 8 and 21. But there's something in your eyes that's the same. That seriousness, that watchfulness. Billy always saw it too. Not anymore, William said, frustration evident in his voice. I've tried telling her who I am, but she won't believe me. Then show her, Mrs. Peterson suggested simply. Find something from your shared past that would prove your identity beyond any doubt. Mrs. Peterson's eyes suddenly brightened. Not everything was lost, she said, reaching for her walker. Come with me. William followed her to a small storage closet in her room, watching as she rummaged through a neatly organized box labeled Class of '04. Here, she said triumphantly, extracting a slightly faded photograph. This was taken the week before the flood, our class field trip to the botanical gardens. William accepted the photo with trembling hands. There they were, 25 8-year-olds lined up in neat rows, Mrs. Peterson standing behind them with a proud smile. And in the front row, side by side, stood William and Billy, their hands clasped tightly between them, both beaming at the camera. May I borrow this? He asked, hope surging in his chest. Keep it, Mrs. Peterson insisted. I have copies. And William, be patient with her. Billy has been holding on to the memory of an 8-year-old boy for 13 years. It might take time for her to reconcile that boy with the man you've become. As he left the nursing home, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. An unknown number, but he immediately knew who it was from. We need to talk. The Oak Tree. 5 p.m. Today. William's heart raced as he typed his response. I'll be there. Thank you, Billy. This was his chance, perhaps his last chance, to prove to Billy that he was the boy she had been waiting for all these years. Chapter 9. The 3-month Countdown. Billy arrived at the Oak Tree early, her stomach tight with anxiety. After her conversation with Evelyn, she had spent hours wrestling with the possibility that she had made a terrible mistake, that the man she had accused and rejected might actually be the very person she had spent years searching for. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the park. She paced beneath the oak's sprawling branches, rehearsing what she would say, how she would ask the questions that might either confirm her worst fears or expose a manipulative lie. Thank you for coming. Billy turned to find William standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, uncertainty written across his features. He looked different somehow, vulnerable in a way she hadn't noticed before. I owe you that much, she said stiffly. A chance to explain. William approached cautiously, as if afraid she might flee at any sudden movement. I understand why you reacted the way you did this morning. It was a lot to process. That's putting it mildly, Billy said, crossing her arms defensively. You claim to be someone I've spent 13 years looking for after letting me believe you were a stranger for weeks. I didn't let you believe anything, William countered gently. I told you my name that first day in your office. I watched for any flicker of recognition. There was none. Did you really expect me to recognize you just from your name? People share names all the time. Not just my name, William said. Me. I thought you would see past the surface changes and recognize me, the way I would have recognized you, no matter how much you'd changed. The implication stung. That's not fair. Maybe not, he conceded, but it's how I felt. Billy studied him, searching for traces of the boy she remembered in this man's face. The shape of his eyes, perhaps. The way his hair fell across his forehead when he tilted his head. Small echoes of a child in an adult's form. "If you're really him," she said carefully, "you'll be able to answer some questions." William nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Ask me anything." "What was the name of my cat when I was 8?" "You didn't have a cat," William replied without hesitation. "Your mother was allergic. You had a goldfish named Bubbles that died right before I left town." Billy's breath caught. What book were we reading together in Mrs. Peterson's class? "Charlotte's Web," William said. "You cried when Charlotte died. I pretended I had something in my eye so you wouldn't be embarrassed about crying in front of me." Each correct answer sent a shiver through Billy. These were details no stranger could know, things she had never shared with anyone else. "One more," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What did we bury under this tree?" William's expression softened with the memory. "A time capsule, a shoebox with your favorite hair ribbon, my lucky marble, a letter each of us wrote to our future selves, and a packet of wildflower seeds that you said would grow into a garden by the time we dug it up as adults." Tears filled Billy's eyes. Only William would know about their secret time capsule, a childhood treasure they had buried with solemn ceremony, promising to unearth it when they were grown. It had never been mentioned to anyone else. "It really is you," she whispered, the realization both wonderful and terrible. "You came back." William took a tentative step closer. "I promised I would." The distance between them suddenly seemed both vast and infinitesimal. Billy's mind raced with conflicting emotions, joy at finding him after all these years, anger that he had been right in front of her for weeks without her recognition, shame at how cruelly she had dismissed him that morning. "I didn't know you," she admitted, her voice small. "How could I not know you?" "People change," William said gently, "especially between 8 and 21. But you knew me." "I was looking for you," he explained. "You weren't looking for this version of me." The truth of his words hit Billy like a physical blow. She had been searching for a boy frozen in time, not the man he would naturally become. Her fantasy had blinded her to the reality standing right in front of her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks, "for not recognizing you, for the things I said this morning." William hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you, something that might help." He handed her a photograph, slightly creased but well preserved. Billy gasped as she recognized it, their third-grade class picture, taken just days before the flood. There they were in the front row, her copper pigtails and his serious dark eyes, their hands clasped tightly between them. "Mrs. Peterson gave it to me," William explained. "I went to see her today, hoping she might help me prove who I am." "She recognized you right away, didn't she?" Billy asked, tracing their childhood images with a trembling finger. William nodded. "Some people see more clearly than others." The gentle rebuke wasn't lost on Billy. She had been blind, willfully blind, perhaps, to what had been right in front of her. "What happens now?" she asked, suddenly aware of the strange limbo they occupied. Technically married, yet practically strangers. Childhood friends reunited, yet changed beyond recognition. "That depends on you," William said carefully. "On what you want." Before Billy could respond, the sharp click of heels on the park path announced another presence. Charlotte Kalisha approached, her expression a careful mask of composure that didn't quite hide her displeasure at finding her daughter with William. "Billy, I've been looking everywhere for you," Charlotte said, her gaze flickering briefly to William before returning to her daughter. "We need to discuss something important." "Mom, this isn't a good time," Billy began, hurriedly wiping away her tears. "I'm afraid it can't wait," Charlotte insisted, her tone brooking no argument. "It's about your future." William took a step back, sensing the private nature of the conversation. I should go. No, Billy said quickly, reaching for his arm. Please stay. Whatever my mother has to say, you can hear it, too. Charlotte's eyebrows rose at the familiar gesture, her gaze sharpening as she noted the tear tracks on Billy's cheeks and the photograph still clutched in her hand. Her eyes lingered on the image for a moment, and something like recognition flickered across her face before she carefully composed her expression again. Very well, she said, her coolness now seeming slightly forced. I won't beat around the bush. Jonathan Pierce's father has offered a very advantageous business partnership, a merger of Pierce Development and Kalisha Real Estate that would secure your future and expand our company's reach significantly. And what does that have to do with me? Billy asked warily, though she already suspected the answer. Jonathan has made it clear that his interest in this merger is contingent upon a personal relationship with you, Charlotte said, her tone matter of fact. He's quite taken with you, Billy. You mean he wants to date me as part of a business deal? Billy's voice rose incredulously. That's prehistoric, Mom, and insulting. It's pragmatic, Charlotte corrected, and it's not as if Jonathan is asking for your hand in marriage sight unseen. He simply wants a fair chance to court you properly, without distractions. Her gaze slid meaningfully to William. I'm not a commodity to be bartered in a business deal, Billy protested. Of course not, darling, Charlotte agreed smoothly. But you are a 21-year-old woman who has spent far too long chasing childhood fantasies instead of building a real future. William stiffened beside Billy, clearly stung by the implication that he was nothing more than a fantasy. Billy felt a surge of protectiveness. Mom, there's something you should know, she began, her fingers tightening around the photograph. William isn't just someone with the same name as my childhood friend. He is my childhood friend, the boy I've been searching for all these years. Charlotte's perfect composure slipped for a moment, surprise flickering across her face before skepticism replaced it. That's impossible. The Banks family moved to New York after the flood. They never returned to Willow Creek. He returned, Billy insisted, alone, to find me, and conveniently purchased a property through our agency, ensuring close contact with you. Charlotte's voice dripped with suspicion. Forgive me if I find the timing curious. Mrs. Kalisha, William interjected quietly, I understand your concern, but I assure you my intentions toward Billy are honorable. They always have been. Honorable intentions don't build successful futures, Charlotte said dismissively. Practical decisions do, which is why I've come to offer Billy a choice. She turned to face her daughter fully, her expression softening into something almost pleading. 3 months, Billy. That's all I'm asking. Give Jonathan 3 months of your undivided attention. Get to know him properly. If, after that time, you still feel nothing for him, I won't mention it again. And if I refuse, Billy challenged. Charlotte's face hardened once more. Then I'll be forced to reconsider your position at Kalisha Real Estate. The Pierce merger is too important to jeopardize over romantic notions of childhood sweethearts. You'd fire your own daughter, Billy gasped, genuinely shocked. Over this? I'd do what's necessary to secure your future, Charlotte corrected, even if you can't see the wisdom of it now. Silence fell among the trio, broken only by the distant laughter of children playing and the rustling of oak leaves overhead. Billy felt torn between outrage at her mother's ultimatum and fear of losing the career she had worked so hard to build. 3 months, Charlotte repeated, her voice gentler now. That's all I ask, time to consider all your options before making a decision you might regret. With that parting shot, she turned and walked away, heels clicking purposefully on the path. Billy and William stood in stunned silence beneath the oak tree, the weight of Charlotte's ultimatum hanging heavy between them. Finally, William spoke, his voice carefully neutral. What will you do? Billy stared after her mother's retreating figure, conflicting emotions warring within her. "I don't know," she admitted. "My career means everything to me. But so does." She trailed off, unable to articulate the complex tangle of feelings William stirred in her. This man who was both her oldest friend and a virtual stranger, both intimately familiar and completely unknown. "So does what?" William pressed gently. Billy met his gaze, seeing both the boy she had lost and the man he had become. "So does keeping our promise," she whispered, "finding our way back to each other." William's expression softened. "We have 3 months to figure it out," he said. "And Billy?" "This time I'm not going anywhere." As the sun set over Willow Creek, casting the oak tree in golden light, Billy felt something shift within her, a recognition not of William's face or voice, but of his steadfast heart. The same heart that had promised to find its way back to her all those years ago. And somehow, despite all odds, it had. Chapter 10. Fading Walls. 2 weeks into Charlotte's 3-month ultimatum, Billy found herself in an impossible position. By day, she dutifully accompanied Jonathan Pierce to business lunches and charity functions, maintaining the pretense of giving him a fair chance. By night, her thoughts inevitably drifted to William, to stolen moments beneath the oak tree, to the photograph she now kept on her nightstand, tangible proof of their shared past. "You seem distracted today," Jonathan observed as they walked along Willow Creek's renovated riverwalk. The afternoon sun glinted off the water, painting everything in deceptively cheerful light. "Is something bothering you?" "Just work," Billy lied, forcing a smile. "The Henderson property is proving difficult to sell." Jonathan nodded sympathetically, though his eyes remained calculating. "Perhaps my father's company could make an offer, as a gesture of goodwill toward our future partnership." The casual mention of their future partnership made Billy's skin crawl. Despite his handsome exterior and impeccable manners, Jonathan had a way of making her feel like a business asset rather than a woman. "That won't be necessary," she said politely. "I'm confident I'll find the right buyer." "Of course you will." Jonathan placed his hand over hers where it rested on the railing, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin. "You're remarkably capable, Billy. It's one of the things I admire most about you." Billy resisted the urge to pull away, reminding herself of her mother's ultimatum. 3 months. She only had to endure this charade for a little over 2 more months. As they rounded the bend in the Riverwalk, Billy's heart leapt into her throat. William sat on a bench ahead, sketchbook open on his lap, completely absorbed in his work. Despite her best efforts to keep their interactions private, Willow Creek was too small for their paths not to cross occasionally. Jonathan noticed her sudden tension. "Is that him? Your childhood friend?" "Yes," Billy admitted, seeing no point in denial. "I'd like to meet him properly," Jonathan declared, already steering her toward the bench. "We got off on the wrong foot at the gala." "Jonathan, I don't think—" Billy began, but it was too late. They had reached William, who looked up from his sketch with carefully concealed emotion. "William Banks, isn't it?" Jonathan extended his hand, the very picture of gentlemanly courtesy. "I believe we met briefly at the Founders' Day Gala. I'm Jonathan Pierce." William stood, accepting the handshake with equal politeness. "Mr. Pierce, a pleasure to see you again." His eyes flickered briefly to Billy, warm with an understanding that made her throat tighten. "Hello, Billy." "Hello, William," she managed, hyper-aware of Jonathan's arm still possessively around her waist. "Mr. Banks was just telling me about his architectural illustration work," Jonathan said smoothly, as if they'd been engaged in conversation for some time. "It sounds fascinating. Small scale, of course, but charming." The subtle dig wasn't lost on William, though his expression remained composed. "It suits me," he said simply. "I prefer quality over quantity." "Not a coincidence," William corrected quietly. "A promise kept." Something in his tone made Jonathan's smile falter. He tightened his grip on Billy's waist, a gesture that seemed as much insecurity as possession, making her stiffen. "Well, we shouldn't keep you from your drawing," Jonathan said, his dismissive tone undermined by a flicker of genuine envy in his eyes. "Billy and I have dinner reservations at Le Bistro. Her mother is joining us to discuss some exciting business developments." For a brief moment, Jonathan's confident facade slipped, revealing a man who recognized he was competing with a connection he couldn't possibly match. "You're a lucky man, Banks, to have someone remember you so fondly after so many years," he added quietly. William's gaze returned to Billy, a question in his eyes that she couldn't answer, not with Jonathan watching their every interaction with predatory attention. "Enjoy your evening," William said, his focus solely on Billy despite Jonathan's presence. "Remember what I said about the oak tree? Some roots run deeper than we can see." The reference to their earlier conversation about how the oak's roots might still be intertwined with those of the time capsule they'd buried sent warmth spreading through Billy's chest. It was a private moment in a public exchange, a connection Jonathan couldn't touch. "I remember," she said softly. Later that night, unable to sleep after the interminable dinner with Jonathan and her mother, Billy stood at her bedroom window staring at the moon. The same moon she and William had once studied through a cardboard telescope, making up stories about the people they imagined lived there. A soft tap at her window startled her from her reverie. Looking down, she saw William standing in the garden below, moonlight silvering his dark hair. Without hesitation, Billy opened the window. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, glancing nervously toward her closed bedroom door. If Charlotte discovered William on their property, there would be hell to pay. "I needed to see you," William replied, his voice equally low. "Properly, without Pierce hovering like a vulture." Despite herself, Billy smiled. "Wait there. I'll come down." Moments later, she slipped through the garden door, pulling her robe tighter against the night's chill. William stood beneath the old magnolia tree, his expression clearing with relief when he saw her. "This is crazy," Billy said, though she couldn't keep the pleasure from her voice. "If my mother finds you here—" "I know," William acknowledged, "but I couldn't stand another day of seeing you with him, pretending to be happy with this arrangement." "It's not forever," Billy assured him. "Just until I figure out a way to handle my mother's ultimatum without losing everything I've worked for." William stepped closer, moonlight casting shadows across his features. "And us? What about what we found under the oak tree? What about our marriage?" The question hung between them, complicated and impossible to answer simply. Their impulsive wedding night seemed both a lifetime ago and merely moments past. "I don't know," Billy admitted, her voice small. "Everything's happening so fast, William. Finding you after all these years, discovering you're the man I've been spending time with, learning to see the boy I knew in the man you've become. It's overwhelming." "I understand," William said gently. "I've had 13 years to think about finding you again. You've had 2 weeks to adjust to finding me." His understanding only made Billy's confusion more painful. She reached out impulsively, touching his cheek with trembling fingers. "I wish I had recognized you immediately, that I had known you the moment I saw you in my office that day." "You're recognizing me now," William said, covering her hand with his own. "That's what matters." In the moonlit garden, with night-blooming jasmine scenting the air around them, Billy felt the walls she had carefully constructed around her heart beginning to crumble. This man, this grown version of the boy she had loved with all the pure intensity of childhood, was breaking through her defenses with nothing more than patience and understanding. "Tell me," Billy urged, suddenly desperate to know everything about the years they had missed. "Tell me about your life in New York, how you grew from that boy into this man standing before me." William led her to the garden bench beneath the magnolia, where they sat close enough that their shoulders touched, a point of warmth in the cool night. "It wasn't easy at first," he began, his voice soft with remembered pain. "My father worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. The apartment was tiny, nothing like our house here, and school." He shook his head. "The teachers weren't like Mrs. Peterson. They had no patience for a kid who struggled with reading." Billy's heart ached for the boy he had been, thrust into such a harsh new reality. "But you overcame it," she said, thinking of the successful man beside her. "Eventually," William agreed. "A teacher in 9th grade recognized that my problem wasn't laziness or stupidity. It was dyslexia. Once I had that diagnosis, things improved. I found strategies to work around it, ways to use my visual strengths to compensate for my reading difficulties." As William continued his story, the construction jobs he took to pay for art supplies, the community college courses in architectural drawing, the small commissions that gradually built his reputation, Billy found herself falling deeper into an emotion she couldn't quite name. It wasn't simply admiration for his perseverance, though that was certainly part of it. It was something more profound, a recognition of the soul she had always known. "All those years," she murmured when he finished, "I was looking for a boy who no longer existed, while you were becoming the man sitting beside me now." "I'm still him," William said earnestly. "Still the boy who promised to find his way back to you. Just grown." Billy nodded, feeling as if pieces of a puzzle were finally clicking into place. "I'm beginning to see that." A light flicked on in an upstairs window, Charlotte's bedroom. Billy tensed, suddenly aware of how long they had been talking. "You should go," she whispered reluctantly. "My mother—" William stood, understanding in his eyes. "I know. But Billy, promise me something." "What?" "Don't give up on us because of your mother's ultimatum or Pierce's pressure. Give us, these 3 months too. Get to know the man I've become, just as I'm getting to know the woman you are now." The request was fair, simple, and yet profound in its implications. Billy knew that truly opening herself to William again would mean risking everything: her relationship with her mother, her professional standing, the secure future Charlotte had mapped out for her. But looking at him in the moonlight, she couldn't imagine walking away from the second chance they had been given. "I promise," she said softly. "These 3 months belong to both of you." William's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. He leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead, chaste, respectful, yet filled with a promise of deeper connection to come. "Until tomorrow," he whispered. As she returned to her room, Billy caught sight of the childhood photograph on her nightstand, 2 8-year-olds with clasped hands and bright futures ahead of them. Beside it, she placed the small gold ring she had thrown at William that fateful morning, which he had returned to her beneath the oak tree as a token of faith. For the first time in 13 years, Billy fell asleep without feeling the ache of searching. What had been lost was found. What had been forgotten was remembered. Chapter 11. The Letter. The morning of Charlotte Kalicia's ultimatum deadline dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through Billy's bedroom window as if mocking the turmoil within her. 3 months had passed with startling speed, a whirlwind of competing obligations and divided loyalties. By day, she had fulfilled her promise to her mother, accompanying Jonathan to business functions and social events, maintaining the facade of interest while her heart remained firmly elsewhere. By night, she had met William in secret, at the oak tree in his cottage by the river, in quiet corners of Willow Creek where they could speak freely. With each encounter, the walls between them had thinned, allowing glimpses of the deep connection they had once shared as children, now transforming into something adult and profound. Today she would have to choose. Billy sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection without really seeing it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan, a reminder of their dinner reservation that evening, where her mother expected her to formalize their relationship, securing the business merger that would expand Kalisha Real Estate into something greater than Charlotte had ever dreamed possible. A second buzz announced a text from William. "Whatever you decide today, know that I understand. I always have." The contrast between the two messages couldn't have been starker. Jonathan's assuming her compliance, William's offering understanding regardless of her choice. It crystallized everything Billy had come to realize over these 3 months. With Jonathan, she would have security, status, her mother's approval. With William, she would have authenticity, genuine connection, and love that had survived 13 years of separation. The choice seemed both impossible and blindingly obvious. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Billy? Are you awake?" Charlotte's voice carried through the wood, unusually hesitant. "Come in," Billy called, quickly wiping away the evidence of tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Charlotte entered, already dressed for work in a tailored suit that emphasized her still youthful figure. At 50, she remained a striking woman, though faint lines around her eyes and mouth told of years spent building a business from nothing after being widowed young. "I wanted to speak with you before we both left for the day," Charlotte said, perching on the edge of Billy's bed. "About tonight's dinner." "I know what you're going to say, Mom," Billy began, bracing herself for the familiar pressure. "That this merger is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That Jonathan is a good match who can provide security and status." "Actually," Charlotte said, surprising her, "I was going to say that I found this in the attic while looking for some old property deeds." She held out a small, weather-beaten envelope, yellowed with age and slightly warped, as if it had once been wet and then dried. Billy took it with confusion, turning it over to find her name written in a childish scrawl she recognized immediately. "William's handwriting," she whispered, her fingers trembling. "Where did you get this?" Charlotte's expression was difficult to read, a mix of guilt and resignation. "It arrived about a week after your father's funeral. You were so devastated by his death that I put it aside, meaning to give it to you when you were stronger. Then the flood came, and in all the chaos, I forgot about it." "You forgot?" Billy stared at her mother in disbelief. "For 13 years?" "Not exactly," Charlotte admitted, unable to meet her daughter's gaze. "I found it again when we were cleaning up after the flood. By then, William and his family were gone. You were finally beginning to smile again, to look forward instead of backward. I made a decision, perhaps the wrong one, to put it away rather than reopen that wound." Billy looked down at the envelope in her hands, this tangible piece of her past that had been hidden from her all these years. "And now? Why give it to me today of all days?" Charlotte sighed, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. "Because today you're making a choice that will shape your future. You deserve to make it with all the information available to you." The admission stunned Billy. After months of pushing her toward Jonathan, of dismissing William as a childhood fantasy, her mother was now offering her, what exactly? Permission to choose differently. "I don't understand," Billy said carefully. "I thought you wanted me to choose Jonathan, to secure the merger." "I want you to be happy," Charlotte corrected, her voice softening. "And secure, yes. That's always been my priority, ensuring you never face the financial uncertainty I did when your father died." She reached out to touch Billy's cheek in a rare gesture of affection. "But I've watched you these past 3 months, Billy. With Jonathan, you're polite, accommodating, dutiful. With William, yes, I know about your secret meetings. You're alive in a way I haven't seen since you were a child, since before the flood." Tears pricked at Billy's eyes. "You knew?" "About William and me?" Charlotte laughed softly. "Willow Creek is a small town, darling, and mothers have a way of knowing things even when they're not told directly." She paused, her composure slipping to reveal unexpected vulnerability. "I saw you two at the oak tree last week. The way he looked at you, it reminded me of how your father used to look at me. That's when I knew I was fighting a losing battle, and perhaps a battle I shouldn't be fighting at all." She stood, straightening her jacket with a return to her usual composed demeanor. "Read the letter, then make your choice. Not for me, not for Kalisha Real Estate, but for yourself." With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her and leaving Billy staring at the envelope in her hands. A message from the past arriving at precisely the moment it was most needed. With trembling fingers, Billy opened the envelope carefully, mindful of its fragility. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded multiple times and covered in the same childish handwriting that had addressed the envelope. "Dear Billy, I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye before we left. Dad said we had to go right away because of the flood. I wanted to see you one more time, but he wouldn't let me. We're in New York now. It's very big and very noisy. I don't like it. Our apartment is small and the kids at my new school are mean. I miss you and our tree and Mrs. Peterson's class. Dad says we won't be coming back to Willow Creek. He says there's nothing left for us there. But he's wrong. You're there, and I promised I would find my way back to you. I don't know when I can come back. Maybe not until I'm grown up and can drive a car by myself, but I will come back, Billy. I promise, no matter how long it takes. I hid something for you under the loose floorboard in my old bedroom. If my house isn't underwater, maybe you can get it. It's a special rock from the river that looks like a heart. I was going to give it to you for your birthday. Please don't forget me. I won't forget you, not ever. Your best friend, William. P.S. Dad says I can't write to you anymore after this because we need to move forward, not backward. But I'll keep writing letters in my head until I see you again." Tears flowed freely down Billy's cheeks as she read and reread the letter, hearing the voice of the 8-year-old boy she had lost in each carefully printed word. His loneliness, his determination, his unwavering commitment to their promise, all preserved on this fragile sheet of paper that had somehow found its way to her at exactly the right moment. He had tried to reach out to her. He had tried to maintain their connection despite his father's prohibition. And all these years, she had believed he had simply forgotten her, moved on with his life without a backward glance. The revelation solidified something within Billy, a certainty that had been growing during these 3 months of rediscovery. William had never broken their promise, not even as a child. He had always intended to find his way back to her. And he had. Against all odds, across 13 years of separation and change, he had kept that childhood vow. With sudden determination, Billy reached for her phone and typed 2 messages. The first to Jonathan. "I'm sorry, but I won't be able to make dinner tonight, or any night. My answer is no." The second to William. "Meet me at the oak tree. Noon. I have something important to share with you." Setting her phone aside, Billy carefully refolded the letter and placed it in her jewelry box, alongside the gold ring from their impulsive wedding night. Then she began to prepare for what she knew would be the most important meeting of her life. William arrived at the oak tree early, his heart racing with a mixture of hope and fear. Billy's message had been cryptic, offering no hint as to which way her decision had fallen. After 3 months of rebuilding their connection, of sharing both their past and present selves with each other, today would determine whether they had a future together. He had brought the tin box with him, the same one that had once held their childhood promise, now battered and worn from 13 years of safekeeping. Inside, the drawing remained, faded but intact. 2 stick figures holding hands, their childish vow written beneath them. "No matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other." They had found each other again, against all odds. but finding and keeping were two different things. The choice before Billy was not a simple one. He knew that. Choosing him meant potentially sacrificing her relationship with her mother, her standing in the community, the secure future Charlotte had mapped out for her. William wouldn't blame her if she chose differently. He had come prepared to accept whatever decision she had made, to support her even if that support meant stepping aside. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Billy walked toward him across the sun-dappled grass, her copper hair gleaming in the midday light, her expression unreadable. William stood, his grip tightening on the tin box. "You came? Did you doubt I would?" Billy asked, stopping a few feet away, her green eyes searching his face. "Never," William said honestly, "but I wasn't sure what you would say when you did." Billy took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "My mother gave me something this morning, a letter, from you." William's brow furrowed in confusion. "From me? Recently?" "No," Billy shook her head. "From right after the flood, when you first moved to New York." Understanding dawned, followed quickly by disbelief. "The letter I wrote before my father forbade any further contact. You received it? After all this time?" "My mother had it," Billy explained, her voice catching. "She kept it from me, first because of my father's death, then because she thought it would only reopen wounds." William absorbed this information, a mixture of anger and relief washing through him. "All these years, I thought you never responded because you'd forgotten me, moved on. And I thought you'd never tried to contact me at all," Billy said softly. "That you'd left without a backward glance." "Never," William assured her vehemently. "I wrote dozens of letters in my head, just like I promised in that last one. Letters I was never allowed to send. But I never stopped thinking about you, Billy. Not for a single day." Billy stepped closer, close enough that he could see the tears shimmering in her eyes. "I know that now. I believe you." Hope surged in William's chest, though he tried to temper it. "And Jonathan? Your mother's ultimatum?" "I told Jonathan no," Billy said simply. "And my mother, surprisingly, seems to understand. She's the one who gave me your letter this morning, who nudged me toward making my own choice rather than the one she had planned for me." William hardly dared to breathe. "And what choice have you made, Billy?" In answer, she closed the remaining distance between them, her hands coming up to frame his face with exquisite tenderness. "The only choice I could ever make once I truly saw you, once I recognized the boy in the man." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his in a gesture of profound intimacy. "I choose you, William Banks. I choose the promise we made beneath this tree when we were 8 years old. I choose the life we can build together now as adults who have found their way back to each other against all odds." Joy, pure and overwhelming, flooded through William. He wrapped his arms around her waist, drawing her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair, her skin, the essence of the woman who had occupied his heart for as long as he could remember. "I've been waiting to hear those words for 13 years, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say them," Billy murmured against his shoulder. "To see what was right in front of me all along." William pulled back slightly, reaching into his pocket to retrieve something he had carried with him every day since their impulsive wedding night. The gold ring she had thrown at him that morning, now attached to a simple gold chain. "I had this resized," he explained, holding it up so it caught the sunlight filtering through the oak leaves. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to wear it again, but I hoped—" Billy's eyes widened with recognition, then softened with understanding. "Our wedding ring. From the chapel. It doesn't have to mean what it meant that night," William said hastily. "We can start fresh, take things slowly." "No," Billy interrupted, her voice firm as she extended her left hand toward him. "We've waited 13 years, William. I don't want to wait any more." With trembling fingers, William slid the ring onto her hand. This time a perfect fit, this time accepted with full awareness and intention. "Are you sure? This is real, Billy, not a drunken impulse or a childhood fantasy. This is us, as we are now, choosing each other." "I've never been more sure of anything," Billy assured him, her eyes never leaving his. "I love you, William Banks. Not just the boy you were, but the man you've become. I love your strength, your patience, your determination. I love that you kept our promise when everything and everyone tried to make you break it." William's heart swelled with emotions too vast to contain. "I love you too, Billy Kalisha. I always have. Even when we were just kids making impossible promises under this tree, I think some part of me knew that what I felt for you would last a lifetime." As the sun reached its zenith above them, bathing the oak tree in golden light, William drew Billy into a kiss that felt like coming home, like recognition, like remembrance, like a promise renewed. Their lips met with the certainty of souls who had found each other across time and distance, who had overcome separation and change to arrive at this perfect moment of reunion. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, William reached into his back pocket for the small tin box. "I brought something for you. For us, really." Billy's eyes widened as she recognized it. "Our promise box. You kept it all this time." "It was the only thing I managed to grab before we left," William explained, opening it to reveal the faded drawing inside. "My most prized possession." Together they sat beneath the oak tree, examining the childish drawing with its solemn vow written in uneven letters. "No matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other." "We did it," Billy whispered, tracing the two stick figures with her finger. "We kept our promise, and made a new one," William added, his thumb brushing over the gold band now secure on her finger. As afternoon shadows lengthened around them, Billy and William remained beneath the oak tree, their hands clasped just as they had been in the childhood photograph that had helped bridge the gap between past and present. They spoke of the future they would build together, of dreams long deferred now possible, of a love that had survived separation, change, and time itself. Above them, the ancient oak stood witness to promises kept and renewed, its branches sheltering two hearts that had, against all odds, found their way back to each other at last. Chapter 12. The Promise Fulfilled. Afternoon, sunshine filtered through the oak leaves, dappling the ground where Billy and William sat with their shoulders touching, the precious tin box open between them. They had been talking for hours, planning their future, reminiscing about their past, savoring the miracle of having found each other again. "We should probably let my mother know about our decision," Billy said eventually, though she made no move to leave the tranquility of their oak tree sanctuary. "She'll be wondering." William nodded, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on the back of her hand where the gold ring now sat. A tangible symbol of promises both old and new. "Do you think she'll be upset about Jonathan and the merger?" "Surprisingly, no," Billy said, still marveling at the unexpected turn her mother had taken that morning. "I think she's finally realized that some things matter more than business success." "Like happiness," William suggested with a small smile. "Like love," Billy corrected, leaning her head against his shoulder. "The kind that survives 13 years of separation and still feels like coming home." William pressed a kiss to her copper hair, his heart so full it seemed impossible that his chest could contain it. "I still can't believe you didn't recognize me," he teased gently. "Was I really that ugly as a kid?" Billy laughed, the sound free and joyous. "You were adorable, and you know it. But who expects an awkward 8-year-old boy to turn into—" She gestured vaguely at him. "All this." "I wasn't confident around you," William admitted. "I was terrified you'd never see me. Really see me. that I'd found you only to lose you again. Billy's expression sobered as she turned to face him fully. I see you now, William. I see the boy who struggled with reading, but helped me with math. I see the friend who pretended not to cry when Charlotte's Web made me weep. I see the man who crossed years and miles to keep a promise most people would have forgotten. She reached up to trace the line of his jaw, her touch feather-light. Most of all, I see the heart that hasn't changed, even when everything else did. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they finally rose, hands naturally intertwining as they walked toward the future they had chosen, together. There's something I want to show you first, William said, guiding her not toward town, but deeper into the park, toward the river. Something I've been working on. In a small clearing near the riverbank, spread on a blanket beneath a young willow tree, was a picnic, complete with champagne chilling in ice. You planned this, Billy accused, though her smile belied any real annoyance. You were that confident in my answer? Not confident, William corrected, pulling her close. Hopeful, and prepared for either outcome. From beside the picnic basket, he retrieved a large envelope. Inside were architectural drawings, beautiful, detailed renderings of a house with large windows, a wrap-around porch, and an oak tree prominently featured in the front yard. Our house, William explained as Billy examined the drawings with widening eyes. If you want it to be. I bought a piece of land just outside town, overlooking the river. High ground, he added with a wry smile. Flood-proof. It's perfect, she whispered, emotion thickening her voice. But how? When did you have time to design all this? I've been working on it since I arrived in Willow Creek, William admitted. Since the moment I saw you again in your office. It was hopeful thinking, I guess. A way of holding on to the dream of a future with you, even when that future seemed impossible. The final rendering showed a close-up of the front yard, where the oak tree spread its protective branches over a simple wooden bench. Beside it stood a small stone marker with an inscription. What does it say? Billy asked, pointing to the marker. William's eyes met hers, warm with love and memory. It says, no matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other. The date beneath it is today's date, the day our promise was finally fulfilled. Overwhelmed, Billy set aside the drawings and launched herself into William's arms. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I think I've loved you my whole life, even during the years when I didn't know where you were. I love you too, William murmured, brushing a copper strand from her face. Always have, always will. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with years of longing, finally finding release. Billy's hands slid into his hair, drawing him closer as William's arms tightened around her waist. The kiss held everything they couldn't put into words, the pain of separation, the joy of reunion, the promise of a future where they would never lose each other again. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and flushed, William rested his forehead against hers, unwilling to allow even inches between them. 13 years, he whispered roughly. I've been waiting 13 years to hold you like this. Billy's response was to pull him back to her, her kiss fierce and claiming, erasing the years of separation with the intensity of her desire. This wasn't the innocent affection of childhood friends, but the passionate connection of a man and woman who had found their way back to each other against impossible odds. To promises kept, William said, raising his champagne glass. And to new promises, Billy added, touching her glass to his, the ring on her finger catching the dying sunlight. As twilight settled over Willow Creek, they remained by the river, sharing the picnic and mapping out their future. They would build their house on the land William had purchased. They would marry properly, with friends and family present this time. I spoke with Jonathan yesterday, Billy admitted. He took it better than I expected. Said he'd always known he was competing with a ghost he couldn't beat. And your mother, the merger. She says there are other ways to grow a business than through mergers, Billy smiled, and that she's been neglecting the residential side of Kalisha real estate for too long. She suggested we might collaborate on some designs, your architecture paired with her properties. William nodded, hope warming his chest. A fresh start for everyone. As stars began to appear in the deepening blue, they walked hand in hand back toward town. Their steps took them, as if by mutual unspoken agreement, past the oak tree one last time. In the silver light of a rising moon, William pulled Billy close beneath the spreading branches that had witnessed their childhood promise all those years ago. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" she asked, tilting her face up to his. "For remembering me," William answered. "For not giving up. For seeing past the changes to find the heart that never changed." As their lips met in a kiss sealed by moonlight and witnessed by the ancient oak, passion flared between them once more. William's hands cradled her face with reverent tenderness, even as his kiss conveyed a hunger that had waited years for satisfaction. Billy pressed herself against him, her body fitting perfectly against his, as if they had been designed as two halves of a whole. The intensity of their connection overwhelmed them both, souls recognizing each other even as their bodies discovered a new language of desire. When they finally drew apart, breathing heavily, their eyes locked in silent understanding of the depth of what they had found, not just the rekindling of a childhood bond, but the passionate beginning of a love that would sustain them through a lifetime. Both felt the unmistakable sense of a circle completed, of a journey that had begun with two children making an impossible promise and culminated with two adults fulfilling it against all odds, their hearts and bodies finally united as one. No matter what happens, we will always find our way back to each other. Some promises, they had learned, were meant to be kept. Some connections could never truly be broken. And some love stories, though interrupted by time and distance, were destined to find their way to a happy ending.